Once again.
Thank you. I just told a very funny joke and everybody's clapping.
Yeah.
You like that?
Good job.
Welcome to the choir room. We're always thrilled to have you here. We were just talking off camera how these days just seem to come around. We've done several special editions lately. Been talking to a lot of folks, and we love this interaction with you. We absolutely are thrilled that you join us for this time of music and ministry and conversation and discussion. And we just thank you so much for coming. I want to remind you that we're going to be giving stuff away the whole time we're having our choir room session, and some exciting things that we're going to be giving away today. And I think you'll want to be a part of that. And the way that you get to play in the giveaways is sign into the chat. Now, we know that not everybody that watches signs into the chat, but if you sign into the chat, you get to be part of the giveaway. So please sign in. Registrations, choral clubs, books, etc., etc. A cruise? No, we're not giving away a cruise. I wish we could, but we're not. A cruise down the Cumberland River on the General Jack. No.
I'm sure that's
Actually, we're not.
Everybody wants that.
And as always, at the end of our session today, we're going to have a 30% discount that we're going to offer on everything that we read today. And there'll be a code that you'll be given, and you can use that to get a discount on what we read today. So, right off the bat, Tim Henning, welcome, the director of our choral clubs here at LifeWay. We're glad you're here. We've got some special guests. So, who are these guys?
You want me to tell?
Well, do you want to tell
We've
them?
got Phil Barfoot here.
Phil Barfoot?
Yes.
Yeah.
And brother Dave Williamson.
Yes, indeed.
So excited. Yes, sir.
Now, these guys are veterans to the choir room. They've been here before, and because we do a lot of music with Phil Barfoot as our partner, and songwriter and arranger and creative developer and entrepreneur and scholar and... What else are you?
I'm a dad.
You're a dad, okay.
A proud
Excellent,
dad.
excellent.
And a husband.
And Dave Williamson, one of the compelling orchestrators and arrangers. And I don't want to just say for a long, long, long time, because it makes it sound like you're old, but...
I'm older today than I was yesterday.
Well...
Today is my birthday.
As a matter of fact, since you brought that up, Dave, we were aware of that.
Oh.
And
Oops.
And actually, we were gonna, as a matter of fact, here it comes. Bring it, guys. It's on its way. Hurry, hurry, hurry. He brought it up. It went out, but let's sing to Dave right now.
Yeah.
Happy birthday to you. It really is his birthday. Happy birthday to you. Here we go. Happy birthday, dear Dave. Happy birthday to you. Yeah. So
You can listen to my arrangements again.
blow out the candle.
Yeah. There's a fire hazard.
And pass me the cake. No, I'm kidding. All right.
That's how it works.
Well, anyway, we're going to be listening to some great music today. And listen, here's the most important thing I want you to hear say. The music's going to be awesome. It's going to be some great stuff from Phil and Dave and Christmas music, all of that. But we have a subject today that we want you to help us discuss. And here's the subject: the choir in the 21st century.
Yeah.
A lot of churches aren't doing choirs and are decided that choirs are old school and we shouldn't do them anymore. Or maybe the role of the choir is changing in churches. And there's an important book that's been written by this gentleman right here. We're going to talk more about it specifically a little bit later. But here's what we want to have happen in the chat today. If you've got a question about choir, or actually if you've got just a statement, what choir is like in your church, or what your thinking is about the development of choir, how choirs may be changing, or how they may be, maybe they're disappearing in some places, or maybe they're growing in others. We just want a really good conversation. We're going to bring on one of our local ministers of music here in Nashville. It's going to join us a little later. And we've got two veterans of choir right here, and Tim is a choir leader of a church, and I've done that all my life, basically. We want to talk about choirs. And so let the choir questions come, okay? So start the chat, and we'll address those subjects about choir as soon as possible. Let's get to the first song to get going, and Tim, I'm going to ask you to set it up.
Oh, sure. The song is called "I Was Glad," and so glad to have you guys here. It's a pull out from Phil and Dave collection, and what I love about this song is it's a great call to worship, and it's straight from Scripture, from Psalms. I was glad when they said, "Let us go into the house of the Lord." It's full of energy, and what I love what you guys did was that it enhances each of the voice parts. You've got the basses, the tenors, the altos. They each have an awesome moment, so it's great. Listen up.
Let's listen right now.
All right.
I was glad when they said
us go into the house of the Lord.
Let us go.
Let us go into the house of the Lord.
Let us go.
Let us go into the house of the Lord. I was glad, so glad when he said, let us go into the house of the Lord. I was glad when he said, let us go into the house of the Lord. I will enter his gates with thanksgiving, with praise I will enter his courts. I was glad when he said, let us go into the house of the Lord. Let us go into the house, go into the house, go into the house of the Lord. Let us go into the house, go into the house, go into the house of the
You know what I remember about that song? We did that song last year at Ridgecrest in our worship week, and my dad sang in the choir. My dad's a bass, so when it was going, "Let us go," I could see my dad's head going. I remember him doing it. He was kind of grooving out with it, so that was cool. Hey, we got a great question that just came through. As a matter of fact, we got a bunch of great questions, so we're gonna stay a little longer after we've heard the last music. So we won't have time to get in all of these. But Audrey in Texas, by the way, I think I know who that is. I have a friend in Texas named Audrey. I bet that's you. Writing, has written the question, how do we attract young adults to choir? So it's kind of implied with that question is choirs are getting older perhaps in some of our churches. And I think there was another question that actually said, my choir's getting older. So Phil, do you have a thought about that? How do we attract young adults to choir?
I think a lot of that has to do with style.
Yeah.
Too. I mean, if you do music styles that younger people love to sing, I think that does attract them. And I think I mentioned before when I was here an idea of maybe going with 12-week commitments, because so many young families are so busy with kids running here and there.
So do it in seasons.
Taxi moms.
And make it.
Yeah, do it in seasons. So
Yeah.
you do a 12-week commitment. You start in September through
That's
the
a good-
Christmas production, and then same with Easter. Because there's actually natural seasons, and if you can get a lot of people to commit to 12 weeks, where if you say, "Hey, commit your entire life to choir,"
Exactly.
they might not. But,
That's a great point. I know some guys that do it that way.
Right.
Now, Dave, you not only are you a compelling talent, but you have children that are compelling musical talents. I think about the group Three Strands, and so you are watching in your own family a younger generation emerge and worship leaders. So, what would your thoughts be about attracting young adults to choir? Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I do. The first one is that I think in any church, the choir ought to reflect the demographic of the church as a whole. So if the church is full of 30-somethings, but the choir is full of nothing but 50-somethings, then there's a gap there, and that's reflected in the question. My take would be, first of all, I would certainly agree with Phil that the music style has something to do with that. The second thing that I would say is that particularly for the new generation that's just grown up on, let's face it, rock and roll, and they're not used to hearing rock bands with choirs. There are a lot of things where you got to kind of divide and conquer, where you got to meet with some influential younger people and say, look, we want to take the choir this way. Would you be part of a choir like that? And then they can be influential in getting people who are around them to partake in the choir, whether for a shortened season or something longer. But for sure, if the choir is doing classic material, with which there's nothing wrong, that will probably preclude a lot of the younger people from being involved because they can't relate to the music.
But in different settings, if you were in a setting, maybe where there was a compelling college program or a graduate program with a lot of young talent in it,
absolutely,
you could do some of the classic literature, because they're living in that space.
Well, there you go.
But the thing I would say is opportunity attracts participation.
Yes.
And what I love to do is take take who you have, and if there was a group of young adults that were not involved in choir but really wanted to be engaged in ministry and singing, I would try to engage them somehow and then combine their participation with what the choir is doing. And I loved combining choirs. I loved to take my adult choir and combine it with my senior adult choir and my high school choir and my middle, and just put them all together and mix it all up and get the ages all represented. Tim, do you have a thought? I mean, we're kind of bogging down a little bit.
Yeah, but I think I have just a small thought that sometimes, we focus on the corporate worship time and the style of that and the attraction. We want to kind of do that blended thing or whatever, and we put a lot of time and effort into that. But then when it comes to the choir, we are just kind of stuck in a rut.
We do what the choir does.
And it almost like you're sitting in the service and it almost doesn't match. The choir's, that's the choir thing.
Yeah.
But I like this other stuff, and I think we got to let the choir be more of a part of what the
we're
flavor
going to get to
is.
that when we start talking about your book in a minute. Well, we got to get to another song quick.
All right.
Okay. The next song we're going to look at is a song called God Is With Us. Now, before you start this track, let me explain that God Is With Us is an anthem, but we're doing something different with this anthem. It is only available by download. What we're trying to do at LifeWay, and this is a little bit of an experiment for us, I don't think we're anywhere near the day when we only are available by download, but we do want to, we have churches that's the only way they buy music. And so we're going to do an anthem that's only available this way, and we want to see what you do with it. So the next one you're about to hear is only available through download, and that's at lifeway.com/worship. So keep that in mind as you listen to it. Before we do it, though, we got to give away a mug. And the mug is going to go to, here's the chat name. I love this. Go Mavs. Go Mavs. All right, go Mavs. There you go.
Oh, that's the title.
Okay, now we're not going to do a Go Canucks. I'm sorry I brought that up. But Go Mavs. If you will write us, if you'll email us at thechoirroom@lifeway.com and tell us how to get this mug to you, we're going to send you and everybody toast Go Mavs.
right.
Yes.
Here we go, guys.
A choir room mug. All right, let's listen to this anthem. It's titled God Is With Us, available for download only at lifeway.com/worship. We'll listen right now.
The skies don't seem to be as dark as usual. The stars seem brighter than they've been before. And deep within I feel my soul is stirring, as though my hope has been restored. The shepherds say they've heard the voice of angels, confirming rumors spread across the land, that a child protected well from Herod's anger is our Father's Son and the Son of Man. Love is raining down on the world tonight. There's a presence here I can tell. God is in us, God is for us, God is with us, Emmanuel. He's the Savior we have been praying for. In our humble hearts He will dwell. God is in us, God is for us, God is with us, Emmanuel. I feel compelled to tell all who will listen that peace on earth is not so out of reach. If we can find grace and mercy and forgiveness, He has come to save. He is all of these. Love is raining down on the world tonight. There's a presence here I can tell. God is in us, God is for us, God is with us,
Well done, guys. I mean, you took a great song, and it really does start with a great song, doesn't it?
Yes.
You got to do a great
Always.
song. You took a great song and you treated it very musically. It's beautiful. We were discussing as that was playing how we would conduct that and what we would try to pull out of a choir. Right. Awesome. Great job. Love you guys.
Thank you.
You did great work.
Dave's daughter on the
That
singing
was
on-
your daughter singing the solo.
It was.
And she gets all of that from mom.
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Glad to know
Without
that.
question.
Hey, listen, in just a minute, we're going to take some more questions and talk about choirs. But first, we want to give away something. We love to give things away in the choir room. And Tim, your main responsibility at LifeWay is overseeing this huge choral club that
Yes.
that God's
Just
blessed
getting
us
bigger
with.
and
It's
bigger
getting
and
bigger
bigger.
and bigger.
Yeah.
And we call it the Red Box.
Which means that I meant to talk to you about a raise coming up because it's
Actually-
getting bigger. The job's just getting a little
right.
That's
overwhelming.
off subject. But anyway.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
No
gotcha.
effort.
Tell us about this next prize and who won it.
Definitely. Well, because we're for choirs and we're for you and for choir leaders. And this is a tool. The Red Box is one of our main tools to show you all of the new music that we have coming out every quarter, and all this beautiful stuff that we're hearing today comes out in the box. And so we want to give one away. And Dan Snyder, you are our winner today. Let's give it up.
Yeah.
So Dan, you get 1 free year membership to the Red Box, and if you'll email us at thechoirroom@lifeway.com and let us know, say, hey, I'm Dan and I won, and we'll
So
get
if
you set
Dan
up.
if he's already a subscriber,
Yeah, if he's already a member, then what we'll do is we'll when it comes to renewal, we'll just credit you back that year. So
Yeah,
it's all good either way.
that's a great prize.
Yep,
And
yep.
any of you that are watching today, if you're not on our choral club plan, you need to be.
Come on, it
You'll
pays
get-
for itself.
It pays
Do
for itself. You get a voucher for the amount of money that the subscription is, and you'll
right.
hear everything that's coming out of LifeWay
That's
these days.
right.
And I encourage you to do that as quickly as possible. Okay, now we got to do some Christmas stuff. Are you ready for some Christmas?
You bet.
We are
Now,
ready.
now, Phil Barfoot, how many Christmas musicals and collections have you done? Do you know?
3,215. No, it just feels like. No, this is the 10th collection in the series.
And they're all titled similarly. How do you keep all that straight in your head?
Well, to give you a little hint, if you look every year at the subtitle, that is the title for next year. Oh. How about that?
The cat's
a
out
little,
of the bag.
All
cat's
these
out of the
years,
bag.
and I did not know.
The gift of Christmas, it says, share the hope. Next year, the hope of Christmas.
There you go.
The hope
Now
of Christmas
we
will say,
know.
share the light. How about that?
Wow, that's
So yeah, just a
awesome.
little
It's a formula.
tidbit of choral music.
I'm glad to know that.
Tradition.
Well, now, what we're going to do now, we're going to listen to a montage of this musical. But before we play it, it's about 12 minutes, I think. Is that right? About 12 minutes worth of music. And there's a DVD with this, and we're really excited about that. Some of the songs you'll see in this montage, though, will actually go back to the music. So it's kind of going to go back and forth between the DVD and the music. But just to give you an idea of how that works. But Phil and Dave, I'd like for y'all to tell us a little bit about this new offering from Phil and Dave about Christmas.
Well, I think what makes the gift of Christmas so unique is the variety of ways you can use it. We've tried to give you as many tools as we possibly can. So a lot of people use it as a collection. As you know, we need all those moments. We need regular Sunday moments,
Yeah.
the 4 Sundays in December. We need pageant moments. We need Christmas dessert moments, living Christmas tree moments, et cetera, et cetera. So we've tried to create a bunch of moments
Yeah.
that people can pick and choose and use each particular moment when they need it in December. Some will use it as a complete dramatic musical. We have 2 scripts to choose from, written by ministers of music, actually.
Yeah.
Pete Battaglia and Dwayne Stroud
Yeah.
have written great scripts. So 2 to choose from there. You can do it as a complete musical with drama, or just standing on risers or in the choir loft in your choir robes with just simple narration. So we've tried to give you different choices there. And also, you mentioned the accompaniment DVD. You're going to see a lot of that today. Larry St. John has just worked an incredible job on this. The last 2 or 3 months, he's been holed up putting this thing together.
That's right.
I think he's still holed up.
Well, and Larry's on our staff here
Yeah.
at LifeWay, and as a new member of our team, and this is his first project like this to do, so we're really excited to introduce a new talent to you,
Yeah.
Larry St. John.
Fantastic.
And something else, too, we offer with this is a custom track data disc. Go ahead and ask me what that is.
Tell me what that is.
I'm glad you asked. We've had a lot of requests for that, and what it is, it's a great tool to implement your orchestra. For example, if you have a brass section but no strings, you can
Right.
pull up the strings in the mix, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Or if you have great brass and strings but no woodwinds, you can bring up the woodwinds. So what it does, it creates a win-win situation. You use all your own players,
Yeah.
and then implement the
Enhance
sound,
it
enhance
as
it
needed.
with
Yeah.
with this custom track.
Yeah, that's a
database.
great tool, and I know it's one that people will take advantage of. Now, Dave, when I listen to a Christmas musical that you're part of, it just sounds to me like you're having a blast orchestrating this
Thank
stuff.
you.
I mean, because you take us, we smell the tree.
That's right, Mr. Christmas.
So as you approach a Phil Barfoot collection around Christmas, tell us some of what you're after and what you're thinking as you go after all these different sounds of Christmas.
Well, Phil and I pretty much live in Christmas 12 months of the year. I mean, if we're not recording it or publishing it, then we're thinking about the next one.
Yeah.
Right.
So for me, Christmas, ever since I was a kid, has always been my favorite time of year, and I'm sure that's true for a lot of the people who are watching here today, too. And so one of the first things that I made sure that I got a handle on when I was a neophyte arranger was to figure out how they made those great sounds, and
Yeah.
the tinkly little Christmas sounds,
Yeah.
and those deep introspective sounds, and everything that is associated with the warmth and the gentleness of what Christmas is.
You can see the candy cane and taste the hot chocolate and smell the tree.
Well, all right.
On all of this. So let's listen right now, a montage with video of The Gift of Christmas. I know you'll enjoy it.
Let's celebrate Christmas together. Let's share the holiday. It's the season to remember the gift that heaven gave. Deck the halls, light the fire as our favorite carols play.
shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all the things that they had heard and seen.
What, y'all should have brought me a present. I mean, it's Christmas. You know, what's the deal?
We did.
Awesome.
I brought you a gift of Christmas book.
You know, thank you. The gift of Christmas, and there's no way in 12 minutes we can show what this book is. So what's in here that we didn't hear that they need to know about? They need to take a close look.
There's a real fun arrangement of Children Go Where I Send Me.
Oh, my,
it's
that's
just flat
true.
out fun.
That's true.
Also Rose of Bethlehem, Lowell Alexander's great song. We actually premiered that in Manger Square.
Yeah, no,
in
now, I
Bethlehem.
was going to get you to tell them
And,
that. This was
wow.
premiered last Christmas Eve, and tell them again where?
In Bethlehem, Manger Square.
And we're not talking Pennsylvania. We're talking about in Israel.
What a great
and
experience.
Here's the funny part of that to me. I'm in Nashville, Tennessee on Christmas Eve, and I'm driving somewhere, and I've got the radio on, and they break in a news break, and they say,
Right.
hey, live from Bethlehem Square, we have a report from the reporter, and the person comes on and says, yes, I'm here in Bethlehem Square, and there's a Christian choir singing, and I went, Phil Barfoot is in, you know.
Where's
he's
Waldo?
everywhere. He's the other side of the world. Well, guys, thank you again. The gift of Christmas, and I hope you'll get a CD of this, a promo pack to it, something that lets you listen to the whole thing, because it'll be a real blessing to you. And we welcome to the set John Penfield. So, audience, would y'all help him come?
Welcome, John.
Now, John is the worship pastor here in Gallatin at a great church. Tell us about your church, John.
Oh, man, it's an exciting church. First Baptist Church, Larry Yarborough is pastor there. Of course, you know his dad from LifeWay here.
Yeah.
But just a great time going on. God's doing a lot of things, a lot of challenges.
Yeah.
But some exciting times.
Now, you made a comment about there was an arrangement of treatment of Gloria, the Micah W. Smith tune, and you made a comment about that off camera. And you tell these guys about what you said.
All right.
You remember what you said?
Well, yes, I do. I think so. Let's look. Now, which piece was it? No. The thing, probably so many of us have used Gloria at some point in the last
great
several
song.
years. You
Yeah.
know, great anthem and challenging piece to learn first time, but once you get it, it's kind of in your blood. And I was noticing even this morning, looking at it again, that you tweaked it just enough to make it unique to this book, but you didn't do it to the extent that you had to relearn it. And so I appreciate that as a director.
Yeah, it's very well done. And John, we wanted you to come here because today, as we told you, our theme today is the choir. We want to talk all about choir, what's happening in your church and what's happening in churches around America. And John, you've been doing this a long time. Now, you're not an old man, but
Young man.
you're
Old
a young
enough.
man that's been doing this a long time. And Gallatin, a great church, and choirs are important in your church. From your perspective, what about a church choir in the 21st century? What are your thoughts? You kind of get us started today.
I've probably been doing it longer than you think I have, but I can't imagine a worship service without a choir. I really can't.
Yeah.
I mean, the Old Testament's full of it, from temple worship to, 55 of our psalms are addressed to the choir master or the song leader.
Wow.
And I can't imagine
Yeah.
worship without a choir. I love having it behind me. I love having their energy, their heart,
Yeah.
their spirit singing
Yeah.
with me.
So choirs, from your view, is something that's always going to be.
Yeah. It's such an encouraging to the people to even be involved in singing when they're singing with you and to you. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and I like to say this about choirs. Choirs will always be, because choirs were not our idea.
Amen.
They were God's idea. Yep. And that is the setup for what we want to talk about next, because Dave Williamson is a choir veteran. You've been on a path that has taken you through every expression of choir. You've directed choir, you've sung in choir, you've arranged and orchestrated for choir, and you have a heart for choir, and you were seeing something in the last few years of your life, and God birthed from that a book called God's Singers. And we're going to give some of these away today. We're going to give 4 of them away, as a matter of fact.
Outstanding.
And you'd sign them for us,
Sure,
wouldn't you? So
absolutely.
we'll have these signed, and we're going to give a couple of those away in just a minute. But this book is all about the choir. As a matter of fact, God's Singers, the subtitle is A Guidebook for the Worship Leading Choir in the 21st Century. So in just a few moments, tell us why this book and what you hope God's going to do as people start to get it and read it.
I grew up with choirs, like so many of us did in churches. And yet at the same time, the early 90s came around in the world, and in Nashville in particular, I was asked to help plant a church.
Yeah.
And it was the kind of church that typically around the world right now, that when it gets planted does not include a choir. So I was faced with a dilemma, and the dilemma is, do I go with everything that I know, or if I'm going to be the worship leader in this church, do I eschew the choir and head in a different direction, like so many are choosing to do? So I went on this big hunt. The first thing that occurred to me was exactly what you said, that I had to come up with a key question. And for me, the key question was, is the choir man's idea, or is the choir God's idea?
Yeah.
Because if the choir is man's idea, we can turn the page and go on.
Yeah.
But if the choir is God's idea, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And God says in Malachi, "For I am the Lord, I do not change." And so there's some implications that if it's God's idea, that we need to pay attention to. So in trying to come to grips with this, I've discovered a bunch of scriptures, and 2 in particular in 2 Chronicles, in chapter 5 and chapter 20, that talk about the specific role of the choir in the life of the nation, in worship, and the fact that it turns out the choir is God's idea.
Yeah.
So not so fast in our plans to dismantle choirs everywhere.
Yeah.
And in coming to that conclusion, we decided in this church we were planting, we're going to go ahead and have a choir. But it's not going to be like any choir in every respect that I've ever seen or participated in. We're going to take kind of a man from Mars approach, take a fresh look at the choir through the eyes of Scripture, and as well as the eyes of practical experience, and figure out what it was that God had in mind when He gave birth to the choir, and then try to do that. And so that's what gave birth to the book.
Yeah, well, and what you've done, I was blessed to have an early manuscript of this, and you were so kind to ask me to read it and to review what you'd done. And as I read it, I went, here's a guy that's not just giving us an opinion, but is giving us what God said about it.
Yeah.
And I was drawn to the message of this book immediately, and then you blessed me further by asking me to write the foreword to it. And by the way, it's worth the book just to get the foreword.
Oh, it is.
No, actually,
it's more than half the book.
That's not true. No,
300 pages of foreword.
well, as a matter of fact, you don't even need. I'll just send you the foreword, and you don't. No, you were so kind to ask me to do that, and I'm just wholeheartedly enthusiastic about the message behind God's Singer and why God gave you this. And interestingly enough, you did really 2 editions of it, right? I mean, I'm holding a director's edition.
That's true.
But I've also seen a singer's edition. So what's the difference between the 2?
The difference is the director's edition is 100,000 words plus a 75-minute CD. And it talks about, it splits the choir up into basically 2 essential things, the be and the do.
Yeah.
And the be part of it is the why and the what of the choir, and the do is the how part.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's all the director's edition is about. And the CD is not just me reading the book, it's music examples and rehearsal with live singers and stuff like that. The singer's edition is only half as long, and it leaves the do part out. Because my goal with the singer's edition was to create something that could be used by choirs in rehearsal, last 5 to 7 minutes of rehearsal time for a devotional, that would get everybody on the same page. Because one of my primary concerns as choirs move into the 21st century, or are moved out of it, as the case may be, is that the choir has tended to exist mostly because it always has.
Yeah.
And I don't think that everybody has really stopped and taken a close look at why the choir.
Yeah.
So that's the point of the singer's edition, is to get everybody on the same page.
I think any directors, any time you spend helping your choir understand why, purpose, is time well spent. Now, Phil, I want to ask you this first question. It came up a little bit ago. It was the very first question, I think, Scott. And the only reason I'm asking you to bring it up is just so I can credit who it was that asked it. Michael Bear asked this question, and maybe this book is an example of part of the answer, but how do you disciple your choir? It's not just gathering to learn a song.
Right.
So where does discipleship come into the choir equation?
You know, a choir really is a family. It's not just a singing organization, but it really is a spiritual organization. It's a lot of things. It's a family.
Yeah.
It is a singing organization, spiritual organization, all in one. And really creating that sense of family is so important. Discipling people with books like Dave's book, guys realize anymore, guys and gals, that it's not just about the music.
Right.
The music is the vehicle through which we minister to the Lord and to our congregation. And anything we can do to encourage folks. A lot of choirs that I deal with will be reading through a book together. They'll take a book like Dave's and read a chapter a week and then get together as part of rehearsal. I think it's very important that we worship in rehearsal and not just make it. You know, so often we rehearse and we worship.
Yeah.
We rehearse Wednesday night, we worship Sunday. Well, we need to worship in our choir rehearsals.
Yeah.
And that however large your choir is, it needs to be divided into small groups. If you have 400 in the choir, it should never be larger than a group of 5. And if you have 50 in the choir, a group of 5 or 4. It's so important that if someone is missing from a rehearsal, that they get a personal phone call, not from the director, but from someone
That they're missed.
that they are missed and they're loved, and that same way, same thing goes with discipleship. Just accountability to each other. That's another great thing about a choir, is we are accountable to each other. If somebody's missing, that's part of our body. And I think it's so important that we as ministers of music minister to our choirs, and they minister to each other and pray for each other. I think it's so oftentimes choirs just pray when they're together in a worship service. Well, let's pray together on Wednesday night in that rehearsal and just make it.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but actually I did.
And you did a fine.
But what I would always say, and John, I want you to address that same question. But when I was getting ready for a Wednesday night choir practice, I had this compelling thought in my mind: what is my choir member going to get tonight that's going to feed them spiritually?
Right.
I don't want them just to come to the rehearsal and deplete their spiritual energy. I want them to come and be blessed by it. And I would pray the same prayer over my choir every Wednesday night. God, give them this time back, refresh their spirit, make tomorrow even more profitable for them, because they gave you this time tonight. Feed their souls.
Yes.
And I want to tell you something, guys. I'm preaching now. But I want to tell you, our choirs are not intended to be just musical organizations.
right.
If you want a musical organization, go find a community chorus somewhere and sing your heart out. They better be spiritual organization, because God did not call us to make music. He called us to make disciples.
Yeah. Right.
And if discipleship is an important part of choir. Now, John,
Amen.
I'm going to shut up, and I'm going to let you get into that
I'm just going to
question.
give the invitation
Scott,
and
if
take the offering.
yeah, if you want to bring some more questions up, we're going to get to them. But discipleship in a choir, where's that fit into your equation?
I think what we're saying right here is discipleship in the choir has to be intentional. It can't just happen.
Yes.
You hope it does. And that is hard, because the reality is every week we come in, we have events, we have Sundays, we have things to prepare for, and you want to give them their time back. You don't want to belabor, but yet at the same time you want them to grow. I think this is a tool. for discipling the choir.
Yeah.
Doing just what you're talking about, the times that you're saying. And it's hard to fit it in. Maybe in your given setting you can begin to have, and we're kind of attacking this a little bit, a Sunday school class for the choir. But at the same time, many of them are involved in ministries and in other places of teaching and service during that hour. So but you've got to be intentional.
I tell you what, you could do far worse than every choir rehearsal just sharing scripture with your choir. Just find a passage, maybe something God's saying in your life, do it in your heart, stir it in your spirit.
Right.
Just read it and pray it over your choir and bless them. I saw a couple of great questions that I want to get to real quick. Randy C. writes, with all the busyness of life, how do you gain momentum, have choir rehearsal be an attractive alternative to the other things in life, and become a priority for talented people in your church? That's Randy C.'s question. That's a great question. Who wants to jump on that one?
I'll jump in
go,
there.
Phil.
John Maxwell has a thing called the law of the lid. And what he says is you can take the same exact group of people and get totally different results by the leadership. If you put the bar here, man, your people are going to rise right there. If you put the bar up here, that same group of people will go there.
Yeah.
And I think that attracts excellence. Excellence attracts excellence. And with the busyness of life question, that is a great question, because a lot of times we have to put ourselves in our people's position. If they worked a 10-hour day, got up at 4:30 and drove to work, and then hustled to get to choir, ate in the drive-through to get there, you have to make choir so exciting that they can't wait to get there. I think the greatest compliment we could have is for people to walk out of rehearsal and come up and say, you know, I was worn out when I came tonight, and man, tonight ministered to me in such a great way. I can't wait till next Wednesday.
Exactly.
You got to make it so exciting that people can't wait to get there. You know, choir is something like anything else. It can be done poorly, it can be done great. And for a lot of years, maybe we've done choir poorly. Maybe we haven't done it right. You know, a group of long-faced people singing long songs in long robes. You know?
For a long time.
For a long time. No wonder choirs are long gone. But on the other hand, it's the most exciting organism in the world to have a stage full of people praising God from their socks on up, making Him the audience, taking the congregation with them in worship. There's nothing in this world more exciting than that, and that's what heaven's going to be for millions of years.
Yeah.
So what a privilege God gives us on earth to have a little taste of that.
Yeah, John, how do you keep them coming back? They're busy. Their kids are in ball games. How do they come back week after week? How do you get momentum?
The seasons you were talking about earlier is so important, and it's helpful. It's a great idea. I appreciate that. I think keeping forefront that we really are a ministry. We are a spiritual leadership. Yes. We've got to do music with excellence, and we can all get caught in, as I said, you're going from Sunday to Sunday, event to event, and you're just trying to keep music going. But we've got to do it with excellence. But we've got to realize first that we're spiritual leadership.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we have to minister to them as spiritual leadership.
I agree with that.
And when they realize, and then when they start realizing that they are doing it because not they love music, but because they're called of God.
Amen.
And when they're called of God to be, this is the ministry that I'm going to invest my life with, that is the priority in my ministry, then, you know, but we're guilty in churches of using everybody, using a handful everywhere.
Yeah.
And then we wonder why they're not committed. And so I think we've got to step back as leadership and go, how are we treating our people?
One of the early lessons in my ministry, and I had to mess up for several years before I figured this out, I used to fuss about who wasn't there.
Yeah.
I used to stand in front of my choir and say, I tell you, we ought to have more people here. And the people hearing me say that were there.
They didn't need it.
So I learned a long time ago to affirm people. Just say, you know what, can I thank you to use their time? I guarded their every minute of a choir practice. We started on time. I remember one church I served, which will remain nameless. My accompanists were notoriously late. When I got there, when I first went to that church, everybody told me, well, they'll be late to every rehearsal. Well, guess what? I started without them. I mean, I did 6:30, boom, I started the rehearsal. About 3 weeks later, they started showing up on time. And you know what? I told my choir, we'll be out at this time, and we were out at that time.
Yes.
I guarded every minute of their time and tried to put inside it, stop guilting people into being there and start affirming and feeding and ministering to people. And the result was they realized that if they weren't there, they were missing something. And I'll say this, Dennis Worley is my minister of music. I love him like a brother. And I'm going to tell you something Dennis does in our choir that is so effective. And Dave, I'd love to hear you comment on this. Every Wednesday night, he brings in an email or 2 or 3 of somebody that had written him to say, when the choir sang this, when the choir led this way, when this is what God did in my life. And Dennis is constantly giving us the feedback of people that are impacted by the choir, and even to the point of bringing our pastor in, and our pastor with tears rolling down both cheeks, telling the choir how much they mean to him and how the partnership. What would be your, I mean,
That's great.
what is your thought about all that? Just comment on those kind of
frankly, I think the first 2 questions go hand in glove. The first question was about discipleship.
things. Yeah.
The second question, to me, is about calling. And certainly in the context of realizing people's calling, all of the practical things that you can plug in to make the rehearsal great certainly apply. But bottom line, I think there's 3 kinds of choirs. There's a volunteer choir, which is the one we all know about, where people show up for choir because they sing and they go to that church.
Yeah.
You know, later on, you sort of discover there's choir based on commitment, right? If you want to be in the musicals and you want to do all the great stuff, then you got to be committed to make this the thing bigger than the sum of the parts. Yeah. But the third thing is for a person to realize their calling before God. And somebody asked me to teach on calling one time. And I realized after I had said yes that I didn't know what it was. You know, I heard it in church, you know, and usually when I was in church, what calling I thought meant was a word that we applied to somebody who was going to go on the mission field or become a pastor. Because what other than the call of God could explain that decision?
That's right.
But
That's right.
But then I started when I was asked to teach this, I started looking in the Word and I saw all kinds of different calls that God used on people's lives. You know, you've got Abraham. He's 75 years old. His wife is 90, and he's called to give birth to a mighty nation. You know. You have Moses. His calling starts by being set adrift in a basket of reeds. You know, you have David, who's appointed by Samuel into his calling to be king. You have the Levites, who are born into their calling. And you have Jesus' disciples, you know, follow me. You have Mary, whose calling was an angelic visitation. There's practically a different sort of calling because God never runs out of creative ways to do it that affect you directly. There's practically as many ways to realize the calling as there are people who are called. And the bottom line of it is I firmly believe choir members are called by God because you don't get into a position where you are asked to week in and week out lead the people of God into His presence without being called by Him.
Yeah. Yes.
It's not just something you decide to do with your leisure time.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
And what's so key about that is whom God calls, He then equips to do the work.
No doubt.
And so
That's right.
where there's calling, there's equipping.
calling is something that originates in God's heart that He places before you. It's something you can't do in your own strength.
Right.
And you have to trust Him. And when you pick up the call, it becomes a covenant
Isn't
between
that
you
something?
and God.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, now we're going to give 2 books away right now, Scott. So he's got those names. Here are the first 2 books signed by Dave. Sheree or Sherry, Sherree. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that one way or the other. Write to us at the choir room at lifeway.com, and we'll get this book to you. And then Gary Walter. You've also won one of these books. Those are the first 2. Now, Scott, before we listen to one more anthem, bring up a couple of more questions. I remember one in particular. They're going by so fast. Hopefully, as we're talking about these things generally, we're touching some of these subjects. And I saw one, how would you handle developing a choir that sings for both a traditional and a contemporary service each week? Now, John, is that true in your church? Do you have multi-styles where choirs are asked to do multiple things?
Really, our service with the choir and the sanctuary is blended.
Yeah.
So it really is more thematic on a Sunday, and
Yeah.
it's not a weighing out, a hymn, a chorus.
Yeah, it's
So
just
not
the
that.
nectar.
It's
Phil,
what's the theme of the day.
What do you have a thought? You've got a choir that's singing in 2 different services with 2 entirely different styles. What's your thought?
Right. Well, you might be asking the wrong guy. I'm a real blended guy. I think you need to do it all in one
Okay,
service.
never mind.
But,
Dave, you're no, go ahead.
but there's so many churches that's their challenge is to do it. Just again, everything we've been talking about applies to that. Whether style doesn't matter.
I agree with that.
If it's traditional
Yeah.
or contemporary,
Yeah.
make it so exciting and make it such a
Exactly.
family and minister to folks so effectively
Yeah.
that they can't wait to get there. I,
Yeah,
don't, I don't think style matters, really.
I think if you focus on the stylistic differences, then your people will. And I think
And you create two
yeah,
factions,
I would encourage you not to even use the vernacular of that, but just go after whatever it is you're doing. Just go after it with all you got. If it's Southern gospel, if it's Handel's Messiah, or whatever, just go after it with all you got for whatever service
you know,
you're preparing for. I think.
Everybody wants to be a part of something great for
Yeah.
God. So if it's contemporary, traditional, man, everybody wants to be a part of something that's absolutely great for the Lord.
Scott, I saw a question someone was asking about. They had only a few people in their choir. If you are that, yeah, here it is. Brian Johnson writes a great question. What do you do when you have a small choir and only one, maybe two? That sounds like pastor's wife to me. Maybe two. Sorry, just a little humor there. Maybe two really decent soloists. In other words, a smaller group, maybe not as much solo talent. Dave, why don't you tackle that?
Wow.
What would be your advice?
Well, I just got an email the other day from a lady named Margaret who has a choir of 10 people that is about to fall apart, and she's so discouraged and just she wants to pull it together and make it viable, but she's facing exactly this issue, and the first thing I would say is, don't limit yourself to stuff with solos, obviously.
Yeah, sure.
LifeWay and other publishers make a lot of material available that is really terrific. The second thing is, I wouldn't want to be branded a heretic for saying this, but I don't think the choir's primary call, based on the study I've done, is to sing special material every week. It's to lead the people of God into His presence. And thus, I don't think necessarily that an anthem has to be part of every single week.
Can be or maybe not.
Right.
That's not the biggest issue. That
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I
That's
think
heresy. No, I'm kidding. No, you're right, and that's why the largest project that we've done at LifeWay in recent years was congregational in nature, was corporate in nature.
And some of the stuff that Phil and I are doing that way too.
Exactly, and so it's not an either or. So I commend you with that. My encouragement is, I think it's a stewardship issue when you lead a ministry in a local church. Use what you have,
Yeah. Yes.
and don't bemoan what you don't have.
Hey, there you go.
But I'll tell you something else. And this, I don't want this to sound over spiritual, but I'm just telling you, prayer is God's economy. And where you have need, get on your knees.
Yes.
Yeah.
God, I feel led to do this, but I don't have the singers to do that. Lord, would you send me the singers? I love to tell the story of when the instrumental director of our church and I were praying, God, we need a trombone. We need a trombone. We need a trombone player. Would you send a trombone player? And out of the blue, one Wednesday night, a gentleman walks in carrying a trombone. Now, he was 85 years old, and he had the trombone that he played in high school that he had not played since high school. And then we started praying more specifically. God sent us a great trombone player. And you know what? He did.
Yeah.
And John, what do you have an answer for that question?
Well, and whether you're understood or not, but because I know even I have gone in and out of seasons of soloist and maybe an anthem choir special or not.
Yeah.
Because there's times that you've got to keep the singing in the congregation. You've got to keep it a corporate event, not so you're not sitting there waiting for a special song or a special person, or so that then even your people aren't dependent on a song by a certain person that really makes you worship, but it's a corporate event. So to not have but a couple of soloists, then use everybody.
Yeah, use them all.
Yeah.
That's great.
And adapt the music.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you what we need to do. We've got one more anthem that we need to hear, and we want to hear before we leave. So let's get that. Let's do this anthem. I'm going to get to my notes here. I've kind of turned the page. It's a great song. Phil, the song Underneath the Tree comes from one of your collections, The Joy of Christmas. And we want to do that right now. Listen to this. When we come back, we're going to take a few more of these questions, keep the dialogue going. As long as you keep asking them, we're going to keep answering them. We won't keep you all day. These guys have to go, I'm sure. But right now, I'll tell you what, let's listen to some more music with this great anthem from Phil Barfoot, Dave Williamson, Underneath the Tree.
As a child on Christmas morning, I would kneel before the tree, and my eyes would dance with wonder when I saw the toys for me. The sights, the sounds, the laughter, the smell of evergreen, treasured in my heart, these childhood memories. Underneath the tree is where I found my presents, gifts wrapped with love, purchased just for me. I will not forget the joy of that moment when all that I had longed for I found underneath the The years have come and gone now, and I've grown to understand the greatest gift was given when God became a man.
Willingly suffered and died to pay sin's cause. I received forgiveness when I knelt before His cross. Underneath the tree is where I found His presence, the gift of new life, purchased just for me. I will not forget the joy of that moment when all that I had longed for I found underneath the tree. In the cross, be my glory underneath the tree is where I found His presence, the gift of new life, purchased just for me. I will not forget the joy of that moment when all that I had longed for I found underneath the tree. All that I had longed for I found underneath the tree. I found
You know what? That's a great song, and John was talking about how they've used it in their church, and you guys knock it out of the park every time. Okay, giveaways are now, so get ready. 2 more of these books, and here they are. Mona.
John Penfield. No.
No.
Nice try.
Mona B. You have won a God Singers Director's Edition, and Ryan Ship. If the 2 of you would write to us at the choir room at lifeway.com, Dave's going to sign them, and we're going to mail these to you. Now, we've also got some other giveaways, so if you'll bring those up real quick. We've drawn a couple of other names. We're giving away a registration, or is it 2? Is it 2 registrations to the same person? Or one per person, okay. 1 free registration to Notes Play in Georgia. So if you will write to us at the choir room, you'll get free registration to Worship Week. And by the way, Worship Week's going to be absolutely wonderful. You're going to be there.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to be there. And then also another Worship Week winner, Carol Jackson. You've won a free registration to Worship Week. It's just coming up here pretty quick. So hope you can do it and make it. And then we're also going to give away Music in the Mountains, are we not? All right, so bring me that name. We've got 2 Music in the Mountain winners. You're going to get a free registration. Music in the Mountains happens in July in Gatlinburg. It's an awesome event, and we're excited about that with our Praise Gathering friends. Alan Eric, you have won a Music in the Mountains registration. And Kitty H., you have won a Music in the Mountains registration. If you'll write to us, we will tell you how to get it. Okay, bring the questions back up, and we're going to just spend about another 10, 12 minutes, see how many of these we can handle at one time. You get the first one, John. Steve M. writes, how would you handle developing a choir that sings for both? We've already done that one. All right, David Tripp. I know David Tripp. How do you get a choir to memorize? I've had several that if we have to memorize, they drop out. What would you think? Do your choir sing from memory? Do you do that a lot?
We have, but I don't do it a lot.
Don't do it a lot?
Yeah.
Phil, do you have a thought?
Well, obviously we communicate much better when it's memorized. And rehearsal tracks. People, no one has too much rehearsal time.
Yeah.
Rehearsal tracks, but don't make it a deal breaker.
Yeah.
If your choir is going to all pick up and run off, I mean, maybe do one at a time and not just throw 15 at them to memorize. But
Yeah. Let me throw something in. We said we weren't going to bog down on any question. We're going to try to. But let me throw this in. My choirs all sing from memory. We sing everything from memory. But let me tell you with a couple of caveats here. I rehearse things for a long time. I don't have their folder full of brand new music all the time. That's one of the keys. One of the things I think we tend to do, we get in love with the new things that we're doing. Bring songs back and bring them back regularly so that they're not memorizing 6, they're memorizing 1. And they're doing some that they've done before. Sure. I used teleprompting on all my choirs. They had teleprompters in front of them with the words. But the last thing is, I never made it a deal breaker for any individual. My choir knew, no matter what it was, if holding a folder was what they had to do to sing that day, they held a folder. And so I might have had 80 in the choir, and there may have been 5 people holding it, or maybe even 10, but it just wasn't an issue. I made it a non-issue. But I encourage memorization because when the choir's face is up, they sound better, they look better in most cases. And I had more control as a director over my choirs. So you said choirs rise up.
Right.
If you expect it, and with some modifications that work in your area, your choir can sing from
Mike,
memory.
here's an
I
idea
encourage
too.
it. Yeah.
Videotape the service when they're not memorizing. And then videotape a Sunday that they haven't memorized.
Show the value.
Yeah, unannounced to them, show them the difference in how they communicate to the Lord
Another
and the
question.
congregation.
Okay, we could spend all day. Ross in Indy, is singing every week a help or a hindrance in keeping people in a choir? Dave?
It depends. That question.
No, go ahead.
Short answer.
It depends on their expectation. It depends on the church in general. It depends on the demographic in the church. If it's a younger church, typically you'll do better if the choir doesn't sing every week. If it's a more mature congregation, then the choir is used to the commitment of being there, and a lot of the things that Phil was talking about earlier, the young family commitments and things, are pretty much out of the way for a lot of those folks. But I don't think, to reuse the term deal breaker, I don't think it's a deal breaker whether the choir sings every week or not.
Yeah,
We're assuming that means singing singing their own song.
Yeah. I always like to build, I wanted my choir, whether they were singing this special elaborate thing or not, I wanted them to feel the responsibility. I wanted them, when they woke up on Sunday morning, to go, they need me today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so whatever it is we're doing in worship, I want them to feel like it matters if they're there or not.
Sure.
And so however you can do that. Okay, here's a great one. Kat writes, schools are not teaching music reading. Graded choirs are going to Awanas. Music literacy is a huge issue. That's not a question, that's a statement. Yeah. But I'm going to tell you what, you have said it well. Phil, comment on that?
That's the challenge all of us face.
Yeah,
we were talking during the break, we are reaping what we've sown. Because the first thing that public schools took out of the curriculum with budget cuts was music.
Yeah.
So when we grew up, we were dealing with people that all read music. And choir was cool. It was cool to be in choir. Now we're dealing with a generation that can't spell choir because they've never been in a choir because none was offered to them. And John and I were just talking too. It's so important that we don't have any holes in our system. For example, if you have a graded choir in elementary, make sure you have a junior high choir. Make sure you have a high school choir, because if you're building your program and all of a sudden you don't have a high school choir, then you've lost your farm team.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, I really believe in that.
With you.
Student choirs were a big part of my life and ministry when I was serving churches. And I want to tell you, the one lie that some people believe is you might say, well, I only got 6 kids. I can't do choir. Wrong.
Right.
If you got 1 kid.
Yeah, that's right.
Use those people, give them opportunity. Don't get hung up on, we're going to wait till we get 30. No. Start with what you have, and I think the most important thing with student choir is they don't. This is my advice. This isn't in your book, but student choirs have to have a reason to exist. Yeah. What many churches do is they'll rehearse week after week after week after week after week, sing one time in the summer, and then not. Yeah. No. Student choir need to be singing, they need to be leading, they need opportunity to serve, and it's got to be consistent, and build in opportunities, experience for young people. One of the reasons our adult choirs are dying is because 10 years ago we decided youth choirs didn't matter. Yep. And we're reaping that today. Start a student choir in your church, or I'm going to come see you.
We created our own problem.
Sorry.
We wonder why we don't have praise leaders now or instrumentalists now. We haven't
and I
been
think
doing
a lot of people in today's world learn by listening versus reading. They say, well, I don't read music. Well, hand them a rehearsal track, and they'll play that over and over in their car, and it gets in their spirit.
And do that.
Yeah,
and there are legal ways to do that, too. Exactly. All right, bring the questions back up, Scott. Okay, WMBC, we have trouble getting rehearsal started. We have people come from everywhere, worship service, kids choir, nursery, youth, ball practice. How do you get them there? How do you get the rehearsal started? Anybody?
Do a drawing for Mercedes at 7 p.m. If you do something fun right out of the gate that they don't want to miss, and that sounds trite, but a drawing for something pretty cool. Every Wednesday night at 7. Yeah. They'll be there.
Dinner with Phil Barfoot.
That's right.
You know what? Start on time. Start on time.
Yeah.
Start on time.
No
start
question.
on time. If you've got 3 people in the room, start your rehearsal.
Yeah. You bet.
And build the expectations. Hey, we start at 6. But don't throw a hymnal at somebody that walks in at 6:15. Just let it be all about the experience and not so much about the rules and all that stuff.
Right.
There's a lot more we can say about that. We're thinking of starting a Saturday PM service. Any ideas about using the choir at that time? Dave?
I've seen it work both ways. The church I was in Brentwood here locally has a really thriving Saturday night service, and their take on it was they did not want to have Saturday night fall behind in any way, so they insisted that the choir be part of that as well. The only time I think it works not to have it, if you're doing choir in some services and not others, is to do what Phil said he does not like to see, and that is to aim your services in different directions. To have the Saturday night service be a contemporary service with a rock band or something.
I think any context will produce its own requirements, and sometimes styles do matter. Right. Wouldn't say never do that, but I think there's challenges with that. Good answer. Okay, let's go on. Going forward, we're going to hit as many. Choir robes or not? Brenda Hitt writes, my choir opted out of choir robes. Do people still use them? Choir robes in your church?
We do.
Yeah.
Now, we'll a lot of times opt out for a couple of months during the summer just for the comfort of it.
Yeah.
But I like it. I like the unity that it gives to the one voice, to singing together. We're not highlighting individuals. Then you get into clothing, jewelry, everything else that calls attention to somebody.
Yeah.
An alternative to that a lot of churches are using now is going with a certain color. For example, it's black on the first Sunday of the month, second Sunday of the month it's
I've
green.
seen that.
And they give them color swatches to match.
Yeah.
And things that match, that look like you're saying, don't draw attention to one person.
Like you meant to be there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? Dress code is an issue. And one thing about choir robes, and I use robes sometimes, almost what you just said, but where sometimes would not, sometimes would, other times another uniform. But boy, it sure solves dress code issues.
Yes.
When they're all in robes and you don't have somebody walking in that becomes the special themselves.
Right.
Which it can be a problem. Okay, sorry, the audience thought that was funny. When do you move kids out of youth choir? Do they graduate from youth choir? When did that happen? I kind of high school graduation was when I did that. Or
That's the natural
I
time.
think so. If you have a burgeoning youth choir, I would say don't kick them out before while they're still the most value to you.
Ross in Indy writes, do you all find that singing every week helps you draw in and keep choir members as opposed to singing twice a month? My answer to that is yes, but Dave, you may disagree. You can be wrong about that. I'd say, no, I'm kidding you. I tend to want them singing every week. But
Yeah, I certainly believe in a weekly rehearsal.
Yeah.
Not for no reason. I mean, there are things you can prepare for outside of Sunday services, worship concerts and
sure.
things. But I have had really good success in younger churches with choirs that sang twice a month.
Yeah.
Where because I feel like the choir is God's worship leader, but not God's only worship leader. And so I think it's permissible for the choir to.
And I agree with that.
To do that.
I think having a pattern is probably the most important thing.
I
Knowing
agree.
that.
Yeah,
You don't want it to be like, are we having choir today or
Yeah.
not? You don't want that
Right.
question in there.
Right.
Well, we could be here all day. I guess I would just want to say thank you guys. And here's what I would say to all of you is I believe in choirs. We believe in choirs. We believe it's God's idea.
Yes.
There are resources like this, God's singers, that can help you. We want to help you. So if you've got other questions, if we didn't get to your question today, feel free to write us and say, hey, I really do need an answer. We'll try to write you back. I know Scott's been chatting in the chat and tried to answer as many questions as we could. We believe in choirs. We believe that they're here to stay.
Yeah.
We believe heaven's going to be a choir.
Yes, ma'am.
Matter of fact, I don't know how many people it takes to be a choir, but I know in 1 Chronicles 25, they said they numbered in 288. So that's a large praise team right there.
is,
So,
boy. Individual mics.
That's a choir. Hey, special offer code is coming for today, the 30% discount. You need it, so here it comes. Where is it? They're bringing it to me.
Drum roll, please.
Gosh, I feel sorry for you, Scott. I have it written down here too. Here's the code that you need to get the 30% discount. It's on the screen, CR00215G. If you use that code between now and June 24th, Friday, 4:30, you get a 30% discount. Hey, I also want to talk to you about CMS just a second. Children's Music Series is something we're committed to. You need to do children's choirs. You need to have a way of raising up a new generation of singers and worship leaders. And at LifeWay, we're committed to that with this resource called CMS. And we've got a special brochure that's digital that's really cool. You need to see it. Some things that we're doing to make CMS better than ever before. So take time to familiarize yourself with that. What have I left out? Free online training is coming up. Those dates, you'll see them. Dates for free online training for CMS. Maybe you got somebody in your church that would work with children's choirs. If somebody could just help them know how. Well, we're committed to doing that. So we've got a free online training tool to help people know how to do children's choirs better. And that's coming up. So look for that.
Beautiful.
Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. God bless you. Next week, next month, we've got Philip Covering coming in our next choir room. So those dates are coming. We've gone way long. We've got to get out of here. Thank you so much. You can.
Are you going to eat that cake?
God bless you. Thanks for coming to the choir room today. Tell your friends to join us next time. This will be on the archive in just a few days if you want to watch it again. God bless you. Have a great day today.